Deshaun Jackson is yet to lead his first practice, but I like some of the things that he's doing leading up to the spring season. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Miles College's new head coach. In segment 2, we'll look at Miles College's old head coach, Sam Shade, who is now the leader of Alabama A&M, the new culture he brings to the Bulldogs. But we'll kick this whole thing off with Coach Jackson. It's still weird for me to say that about him. Coach Jack is how he actually prefers to be called. And I know that because Deshaun Jackson released a video over the weekend that said, hey, Coach Jack here, and I'm going to be on Delaware State campus for the men's and women's basketball game against Norfolk State. I love this, and I also love some of the recruiting that he's done leading into the spring football season. I understand that we haven't seen who Deshaun Jackson is as a head coach, but at the same time, we all know that the evaluation process for coaches starts before you ever win, lose, play, doesn't matter. It begins from probably a week after you're hired. The honeymoon phase kind of leaves, or excuse me, not the honeymoon phase, but just, oh my God, this is our coach. Once he becomes the coach, now what are we going to do? What is he doing? Is he recruiting this way? And for certain people, they're not under a microscope. For most coaches, we won't even know this information. And that's the difference. When it comes to a Deshaun Jackson, a Michael Vick, an Eddie George, what they do is put more prominently into the spotlight. And because of that, we get to have conversations about it. Doesn't mean we have to critique it. Doesn't mean we have to praise it. We get to have conversations about it. Now, I say it don't mean we have to critique or praise, but in this situation, I'm here to praise. I think that Deshaun Jackson is doing two things really well. It's showing up on campus and recruiting the West Coast. Over the weekend, not only did I see that video of Deshaun Jackson, by the way, by the time you hear this, it's already happened. But at the time that I was hearing it, it hadn't happened yet. But not only was I hearing that he was going to show up at the game, I also stumbled across an HBCU game day article. And in that HBCU game day article, I thought it was so fascinating how the West Coast is really untapped territory when it comes to HBCUs. So let's break down what it is. I stumbled across this HBCU game day article where they talked about the amount of West Coast players that Deshaun Jackson was recruiting. Is it up in the 10s and 20s? No, but it's just the beginning. He hasn't been here long enough for us to even talk about getting that far ahead. But it made my brain wonder, and it made my brain kind of spiral and think about there ain't that many HBCUs who are recruiting the West Coast heavily. I look at a lot of recruiting as centralized, localized. Okay, we're in this state. Let's look here and look at the neighboring states to the left, right, up, down. But when we're talking about Deshaun Jackson, that's his base. I understand he's in Delaware now. I understand that he is in Delaware now, but LA, California, that is his base. And with that being his base, he has the connections to recruit it better than anybody else. I don't know if anybody's really tapping into it. And it seems as if Deshaun Jackson has the desire to tap into that territory, to tap into that home base, to tap into those relationships. And in doing that, we must understand what state that we're talking about. We're talking about California, one of the more talent-rich states, one of the bigger states. So not only is it a lot of talent there because they're just good at football. They also have a lot of talent there because it's a lot of people. Deshaun Jackson could really build up a core nucleus of California guys, and it wouldn't be crazy. I love this idea. I understand that he hasn't made it clear, right? Like Deshaun Jackson has came out and said, I want to build my team with California guys. He hasn't said that. He probably won't say that. But what I will say is, with this being untapped territory, more people could start going over there. It could spread the HBCU representation on the West Coast. And this is something that we have talked about with CP3's Classic. With this basketball classic, let's get HBCUs represented on that side of the country because, quite frankly, they don't always know. They're not always present. It's not on the front of their mind. So the guys that would go to HBCUs from Mississippi, they're probably, and if they live in California, they may be saying, we're going to go, I don't know, to some other FCS school. Because they have FCS schools out there. I think that this is great. I think that this could be a huge change, a huge shift. So when I'm looking at Deshaun Jackson, who he's from LA, he coached high school football for a year out there in California at his alma mater, at his school that he went to. This, excuse me, this is something that to me, this is something to me that makes a lot of sense. Deshaun Jackson being a California guy who is starting up his head coaching career, it makes sense that he would tap into a base that he's familiar with from growing up, from being a coach in the area just a year ago, from simply being from there in the connection of being from there with kids who are also from there. Deshaun Jackson tapping into an untapped territory gives him first dibs. It allows him to pick the best talent, and he can. And this is already going to be the case because of who he is. But you're going to see a theme in today's episode of just adding a little bit of extra. I absolutely love this decision. I actually want him to do more of it. The other thing that I loved was him showing up or him deciding he's going to show up. And we've seen, so I'm recording this Monday afternoon. Let's pull the curtain back. I'm recording this Monday afternoon. And at this time, Deshaun Jackson had just got to Delaware State. He posted a picture of something, snowed out on the field. He's in Delaware as we speak. With him being in Delaware, he's showing up for the DSU versus Norfolk State women's and men's basketball game. This is a great opportunity for him because I understand people saying Philly, Delaware, there's a connection right there. But I think there's something to be said for ingratiating yourself directly into the city, not just the state of Delaware or, yeah, we love Philadelphia, but I'm talking about Dover, like specifically saying I'm a part of this community. And in my opinion, community is the greatest part and the greatest asset of HBCUs. When I was in school, community meant one thing. It meant the people I was friends with. It meant maybe the person on the Tiger Walk that I seen every other day or whatever, and we nod up. I ain't never spoke to this dude a day in my life. Like that was community. It was the people. It was my people, right? And when I say my people, I don't even mean expanding it all the way to all black people. I mean my friends, my circle. That was community for me. As I gotten older, it was less about individuals and more about area when talking about community. So it's not just Texas Southern, it's Houston. Or if you want to be even more specific, it's Third Ward, right? Like that's how a community has transformed for me. And I think Deshaun Jackson coming in with who he is, saying I'm going to take a us approach, a we approach, opposed to a y'all approach, is very smart. The difference in this is I'm one of you. This is us. We are in this together, not just y'all. Because you can be an outcast in a community that you're surrounded by, right? Like you don't have to be a part of the community to be present within the community. And that would have been easy. I'm here to be a head coach. This is what I do. But when you show up and you're on campus for this game that has nothing to do with you, that shows that shows fans, that shows everybody in that neighboring area. Oh, he's one of us. He's ingratiating himself. He's joining into our community. He wants to be involved. He's investing. That's what I look at this as. I look at Deshaun Jackson coming to this Delaware State versus Norfolk State doubleheader as a way to invest in the community, in the show. I'm with y'all. I'm really a Delaware State Hornet. I love it. So if we're talking about getting in, and here's the thing. I mean, I was about to wrap up, but let me say this too. Investing in a community as a regular head coach who worked his way up the rank, it has value. I understand that people are already going to come out and support Desean Jackson because it's Desean Jackson, but a little extra never hurted anybody. Hurted anybody? A little extra has never hurt anybody, right? So that is what is important. That's what I'm saying. When we're talking about, hey, we're diving into this area and we're getting first dibs, a little extra never hurt nobody. Because honestly, if me, so and so and so and so all go try to recruit an area that I'm from, I'm probably going to do it better. But me having no opposition ain't never hurt nobody. And quite frankly, if we can have that West Side connection and take it all the way up to Delaware State, it wouldn't be shocking to see the Hornets become the king of the hill at some point soon. At some point soon. Because I do believe that that is a very talented area. The same way FAMU likes to bring all their Florida boys, I can see Desean Jackson saying, I'm going to go get my California guys because this is what I'm used to. This is the type of player that I know and I can connect with quickly. It ain't going to be a whole team of Cali, but you could have a strong subsection of Delaware State that is represented by the West Coast. I love these moves. I absolutely do. So I salute Coach Jack. I think he's making the right steps. He's going up on video. He's trying to show everybody who is connected to Delaware State, I'm here. I'm present. I'm your guy, and I want to be with you. I love that. Keep doing it. Now, as you push forward, Sam Shade. Sam Shade had his introductory press conference. Ironically, Desean Jackson hasn't had his yet. I don't know what that's about, but he's on campus, so it's not like it's weird or it's not like anything can happen. We know what it's going to be, but it's just he hadn't had that introductory press conference yet. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing that's kind of odd to me. But anyway, Sam Shade is here, and he highlighted a couple of points. One, a change of culture, which he didn't have to say I was changing the culture, but you could see it. And then secondly, the responsibility that is placed on him for being the head football coach of a university, and the university happens to be Alabama A&M. Let's break all of that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Now, I'm trying to find some tickets. I'm split. You have Raw coming into town, and you have the national championship. It ain't in town, but I want to watch that game, but I don't want to miss John Cena's farewell tour. So I already looked on Game Time. I'm already pricing, trying to decide, do I want to pay this to sit in a 201? And I want to recognize one thing. So there were some really good tickets, and I looked, and I was like, that's my view? Maybe not, because there was a blockade. I could have just bought those tickets. In some places, they don't let you see the blockade. So now you buy it, and all of a sudden, you got something just in your visual. You can't see. Game Time wants to avoid that for you. Know exactly what you're stepping into. And Game Time is going to have the all-in prices. You know exactly how much it costs before you even say you want to buy it. You know where you're sitting, what your view is going to be, and everything in between. Because I'm going to say this. I did this on another website, and they showed me American Airlines for the Mavericks. They showed me for Raw. That's the beautiful part about Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On College, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Go to Locked On, use the code Locked On College, get $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football, Locked On SEC, Locked On ACC, everything in between, our conference shows and our overarching shows. I consider those our brother, sister, and cousin networks, or shows, I should say. Now, Sam Shade to Alabama A&M is a hire that I loved. I absolutely loved this hire when it happened, and I still love this hire. Dr. Weems said something for Alabama A&M. He said something that I thought was interesting. Athletics is the front porch of a university, and that's honestly true. I don't think it gets talked about enough, but that is the facts. Athletics is the front porch of the university. It does not mean to be disrespectful to academics, but the truth of the matter is, if I'm not involved in that field, I'm probably not talking about that academic field with the school, right? So I'm sure doctors sit around and they say, oh, I went to this school and I went to this school and this school is so hard to get into. Wow, you got in there and this is one of the most reputable medical schools in the country. And I'm sure those conversations happen. It's not to devalue the idea of academics. It's just to say, I'm not having those conversations. You probably aren't having those conversations, at least not with things that are outside of your profession. For example, Texas Southern has a great law program, But when would I ever bring it up and it be natural? Like, why would I bring that up in conversation? Even if I'm talking to a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer. Like, I'm not a lawyer. Where does that conversation go from there? Oh, yeah. So I'm a lawyer. I've been working at this firm for 4 years. Well, I went to Texas Southern. They have a pretty good law school. Were you in it? No. Okay. Conversation's over. It's not really something to discuss. It's not many places I can use some of these academic conversations. I would have to be with someone who is still in my field or who is in my field to talk about the communication program, right? Like, if I want to talk about the School of Communications, you either have to just want to hear me talk, which is okay. I love that, right? I love when people want to hear me talk, or you have to be in communications and we talk about that. But outside of that, if we're not in the same field or you don't just want to hear me talk, I don't understand the value in doing this. That's my personal opinion. So because of that, it's just more rare that these conversations happen. But you know what's not rare? That you find a doctor who's a basketball fan. You find a lawyer who's a football fan, right? Like, those conversations happen. So now, because I can use this conversation point in multiple different avenues, yes, athletics becomes the way that we judge. There's so many people. There are so many people who feel like they can or want to talk about an athletic event, right? Like Texas Southern basketball. We can talk about that. You want to talk about North Carolina Central football? We can talk about that. You want to talk about just like on the blue blood level? We can talk about all of those things. So when he says the front porch of the university, yes, because that's how people think about it. People don't think about what kind of grade point average you need to get in there, except for the Ivies. The Ivy Leagues, that's what they think about. But you'll see that there are more exceptions than there are rules. The rule is, not only do athletics determine how your university is viewed by the masses, football specifically determines how your university is looked at by the masses. And I think that's something that Coach Shade is extremely aware of. And I like that in my coach because he understands the responsibility of being a head football coach. He referenced Dr. Weems's comments about athletics being the front porch of the university. Said, I agree. And then Shade took it another step further and said, well, football's right there on that rocking chair, right there on that chair on the porch. That means we are the face. And with all due respect to basketball, outside of the big school blue bloods, no one's thinking about basketball defining your school. They'll think about basketball when talking about your school. But I think LSU is always going to be a great example for me. LSU football is going to be the thing that determines how this school is talked about. Even though the women's basketball team is absolutely phenomenal, that's not going to be what is discussed to me, right? Like, that's just my opinion. And I can say HBCU certainly are not going to have the luxury of being able to say we are a basketball school. I say that as a school that is a basketball school, and people still don't look at it that way, right? Because football is football. That's the way that I'm looking at it personally. But anyway, Coach Shea flipped that and said that, and I think it's responsible because it's important because it shows me that he understands the great level of responsibility that comes with being the head coach of a head football team. So that's something I just wanted to go ahead and acknowledge. I love that. Secondly, there's a new culture. 100%. He being Sam Shade is a guy who just feels like a different style of leader than Coach Maynard did. And that's no disrespect, right? Because different does not mean better. It doesn't mean worse. It just means different. And I think sometimes we like to add things, and I won't let nobody add anything to what I got to say. I'm not here to tell you that Coach Maynard was a better or worse leader than Coach Shade. What I will tell you is that Maynard seemed to be playing around a lot. He seemed to be heavy on the jokes. He wanted to have a lot of fun, and that's cool. But now you have Shade stepping in, who seems a little bit more business oriented. I don't know if that makes a difference, but what I will say is you were beginning to fail with a leader of this type. It was good to go get somebody who doesn't resemble that. That's my personal opinion. You can win with a coach who is very fun, who is very playful. Like, you can do that. Don't get me wrong. And I'm sure it's not like he was on the field laughing it up all day. There was definitely a time and place for everything. But when you see Maynard's interactions with media, when you see it was very casual. It was very casual to me. And if I'm going to get something new because I need something that's better, I don't want to go back to the same old thing and just hope, okay, we're going to get a different version of the playful coach. Let me go get a coach who's a little bit more serious. And that's what I got from Sam Shade. We'll see if it turns out into being different results. That's definitely something that we should be watching. But I like it. I do kind of like the difference. And it largely because of what I said, you just needed something new. So I do like that they got that. But also, I feel like Shade can be a blend of both. I think he can be a blend of serious, which is his standard, I would say. That's his natural state default. That's the word I'm looking for. His default is very serious, but then he has moments where he's fun. He has moments where you just laugh, you know? And I think that that is a huge benefit. I think that is a huge benefit. And he talked about connecting with his players by changing the word the or the to duh, DA. So instead of THE, it was DA. And that made his slogan, the chase, discipline, accountability, character, habits, attitude, sacrifice, and then lastly, expect excellence. So that's the chase. When you talk about change from the to duh, sometimes it can land flat. Like just he's like, oh, well, you got to connect with the kids. That could land flat. And I'm talking as a person who sometimes I feel like I'm a tad bit hard to impress on these things. I didn't think it landed flat. And I think that's a large part about having a coach with a winning resume. A coach with a winning resume comes in and says, yeah, I connect to players. You like, yeah, I believe it. A guy who comes in with a winning resume and says, we're going from the to duh, and we're going to use this as our acronym, as our core values, you want to buy in because you've seen what his core values have done elsewhere. That's the beautiful part about having a coach with a winning resume. When you bring in somebody who either was an offensive coordinator or has a decent resume, man, you're looking at a player, or excuse me, you're looking at a coach in Sam Shade that is fresh off of an SIAC championship. If he wants to tell me that the chase is the reason that he was able to get it there, all right, cool. Let's go ahead and win the SWAC East. Let's go ahead and win the SWAC East. I love this move. I think that it's really good. I think that his press conference was really good. And you see it on social media. People are buying in. He feels like a leader that they need right now. And he spoke about finishing. We're going to finish no matter the score in the fourth quarter and the second half. That has been a problem before. You have to be able to finish. And I'm not just saying a problem for Alabama A&M. It's been a problem, period. I love this, though. But who replaced Sam Shade at Miles? It's somebody that's kind of similar to him, but I like some of the things that Chris Goode brings to the table as well that are different from him. Now, let's look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. We all know the NFL playoffs are unpredictable. You have a 7 seed who knocks off a 2 seed. You have a 5 seed who was the way better team, but loses to the 4 seed who barely snuck into the playoffs. You have all of these things. It happens. You wouldn't be shocked to see it happen this year. So go ahead, FanDuel.com. It doesn't matter what you think the sport is, or excuse me, what the sport you pick is. It can be the NFL playoffs. It can be the college football playoffs. It can be the NBA. It can be college basketball. It can be anything in between. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. And if you're new, because it's so unpredictable and because it's the playoff season, you put down a $5 bet, win or lose, you're still getting $250 back in bonus bets. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com. Take advantage of being a new customer today and get $250 back in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. There is a new head coach for Miles College, and I like it. I like some of the similarities between their new head coach, Chris Goode, and then also their old head coach, Sam Shade. Now, mind you, what did I just say about Shade and Maynard? This is an interesting contradiction or difference, not contradiction. That's a bad term. This is an interesting difference. When you're replacing somebody who you want to do better, you want different. Connell Maynard was a different type of leader than Sam Shade is. And when I'm trying to improve, I may say, I don't want to go with the same old thing. So that's why I champion them for going with something different. You may wonder, how did I just turn around and then champion Miles for doing something good? That's because Miles is coming off of an SIAC victory, a championship. Because they're coming off of an SIAC championship and they're losing their head coach, I don't mind wanting to get something that's similar. That's the idea of running it back that is understandable. So Sam Shade was a former University of Alabama player. Chris Goode, former University of Alabama player. Now, Goode was there a little bit before Shade was. Shade ended up being on that 92 championship team. The way I look at it is, mathematically, if he took 4 years, best he got there was 88. I didn't feel like looking it all the way up, but best he got there was 88. Goode was drafted in the 87 draft. So there was no crossing of paths, but I'm sure that they are fully aware of each other. I'm sure that they have crossed paths in some capacity. The next similarity comes when you're looking at Chris Goode, who had a prep school. You're looking at Sam Shade, who was in high school, and he coached the high school ranks and won a championship. That's why I like this, because let's see if Chris Goode is from Alabama. But I just thought about that. Chris Goode is also from Alabama. So he's also from Alabama. You like that. He played in the league, just like Sam Shade did. He played all his career in Indianapolis from 87 to 93. From 87 to 93, he played in for the Indianapolis Colts. Let's see. Sam Shade, he played from 95 to 2002. He bounced around a little bit. Well, he went to 2 teams. He didn't bounce around. But the similarity of having that high school representation. Yeah, see, he was a freshman. Shea was a freshman on that team. Anywho, the similarities are both from the state of Alabama. Both were at the University of Alabama. Both were high school connected to the high school ranks. Technically, as a prep school, you are post grad, but it's not often. It's not for long. It's just a year or something like that. So fresh out of high school versus actual high school, both are going to help when you're trying to recruit younger players. Both are going to help when trying to recruit some of the fundamental or the foundational pieces that you could add to your school. I think that the similarities they share are very great. One thing that, or a couple of things that are different, is that obviously it was a prep school, so you dealt with, you could honestly argue this even better as far as development of players out of high school in that first year. You know how to deal with them. You could even argue that. But then the other big difference that I would point out is that Chris Goode was a arena football defensive coordinator. So in being an arena football defensive coordinator, you also have that background. This is his first head coaching opportunity, but he has been in coaching. You do like to see that. You do like to see his connections to the city, to the state. You do like to see all of those things. To me, this is a potential continuance, because you went and got something that resembles it. And this is one thing that he said, President Bobby Knight said: Chris Goode's leadership and dedication to student development makes him the ideal choice to guide our football program forward. I know that typically is just what people say, but if we're talking about student development, that is literally the premise of a prep school. It fits right in line with what it is that he wants to do. So you gotta appreciate the way that these 2 Alabama schools went about replacing their head coaches. One needed something new. They got something new. One didn't necessarily need something new. Their coach left for a bigger opportunity, and they went and got somebody with similar resume. I don't know that man personally or his coaching style, or I haven't heard him talk yet, but they did this quickly. It wouldn't shock me. I almost expected. This is my expectation, that Sam Shade told him, like, hey, I'm having these conversations. I'm thinking about going. And honestly, they should have expected it. If I could sit here and say that people should be calling Sam Shade, I'm sure they knew it too. And they had to know that it was unlikely that they could just keep him boggled down forever. It was a matter of time. And they probably had their ducks in a row to know exactly what it is that they should be expecting. So Anyway, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. We broke down the Delaware State recruiting habits. We looked at Alabama A&M and and Miles College replacing their former head coaches and how I feel about them. Shout out to the culture that I can already see Sam Shea bringing to Huntsville. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at, I'm going to try to find some more information about Michael Vick's new quarterback. Is this the guy who could be the leader of the program? I want to look at that and see his style. And we're going to talk about that on Monday if I can find enough information about it. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we're here to the family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.